you doing, my friends? And happy Friday here on the Jovenshire channel. Oh wait, what's that? It's not Friday? Well, that's because you're either watching this video after it went up, or because it's actually Saturday, because I was irresponsible and did not get my Magic the Gathering video up in time, because I normally do Friday videos, and I filmed this video already, but I forgot to hit the record button and then never checked afterwards. Kids, don't procrastinate. It's bad. Hello everyone, welcome to the Jovenshire channel. If you are new to this channel, we cover all things video games, comic books, TV shows, all things geeky here in one place, especially Magic the Gathering, normally on Fridays, today on Saturday. Dear God, I hope, unless this doesn't go up till Sunday, that I'm not doing my job. Anyways, as you can tell by the title, we are kind of doing things a little bit different in the Magic video. Normally on Fridays, I like to make a deck that I think can actually beat the meta, that is a little bit different from the meta, or at least just my take on some of the specific decks out there. And with Throne of Eldritch, I've been calling it the wrong name for like 3 weeks, so now I've just had myself confused. Anyways, I love this set. I specifically love the art from this set. And so I'm definitely working on some decks, but I don't think that they're just right yet. I'm still tweaking them. So I wanted to go over and do a video on how to build a good deck in Magic the Gathering Arena, especially now more than ever, because it's the perfect time for people to jump in and start playing and making decks, because we just had rotation and a bunch of sets went out, and we're kind of starting with now just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets, I think. So with that said, we're going to jump into Magic the Gathering Arena, and I'm going to show you a few different decks and examples of what you want to do when making a specific deck. So before we jump into everything, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, because if you like this video, I guarantee you're going to like the other videos that we do here, because if you look at this box right down here, it's not just a mess in my room on accident. That is there as a little tease, because at the end of this month, those are all of the hero clicks from the new set. And so I will be utilizing some of those in the newest batch of Hero Click. It's my show here. I do on the channel where we play Hero Clicks, but I kind of send my friends through this little D&D styled campaign. So the next set will involve X-Men, actually. So it'll be X-Men the Animated Series themed. There's going to be some twists and turns that you might not expect, but it goes up the Monday. The last Monday of the month. We are filming it on the 19th. I haven't even filmed it yet. I still have work to do. So, and I think next week might be one of the biggest videos I've ever had on my channel. So keep an eye out for that. So no more self-plugs. If you haven't already subscribed, notifications, all that fun stuff. Now let's jump into Arena, and I'm going to teach you how to make a deck. And you're probably wondering, why would we listen to this guy? He can't win at anything. And that is, most of the time true. But what I can do is make a decent deck, I think. Now, we're going to go over really the basics. This is Deck Building 101 for Standard. More importantly, Battle of One. I'm not teaching you how to do a sideboard today, because that really just varies on the meta, and maybe I'll do another video on that if you guys want me to. And here you see I'm still working on all these decks, getting them up to standard, but I do have a few that I'm pretty happy with. Werewolf I've made I think that's Abzan Wolf deck, which I'm pretty excited about. I'm going to tease all of these decks, or most of these decks today. And this is not yet completed. This is just an example deck that I've kind of been playing with. I haven't crafted everything in there. That's why you see some of these kind of a little more, not hollowed out, but dim. But I wanted to use this deck as a kind of like a monocolor standard in how to build a deck. First off, let's talk about how many cards you should have in your deck. 99% of the time, you should only have 60 cards. If you're jumping into Magic the Gathering, sometimes you might be like, well, there's all these great cards in it. I kind of want to play with more, because if I have more, well, then I have a better chance of winning, right? Wrong! For those of you that are fans of the Game Thirst, Matt Pat, he actually did a video on his channel this week that actually talked about Magic the Gathering and how, probability works in a deck of cards. Great video. I highly recommend going to check it out. But that is the key here, is probability. If you have 80 cards in your deck and you need one specific card in your deck that you have, that even if you have 4 of, it's now a 4 in 80 chance of you pulling that card, versus 4 and 60, which is just way better for your ratios. So just don't ever go over 80. There might be some odd cases that you want to do it. Obviously, other game formats like Limited, Commander, Draft, they're all going to deal with decks that aren't 60 cards, but I'm not talking about that today. I'm just talking about Standard. So golden rule is don't have more than 60 cards unless you think you're silly and you're trying some crazy combo thing off, and I wouldn't recommend it, but hey, have fun once you get to that point. Up to that point, 60 cards, don't pass it. As you can see here, I have 23 land. That's wrong. Wrong, Joshua. How did that happen? 59 cards. Yeah, I don't even have... Hold on. There we go. 24. That's what we want to see. All right, and now it doesn't match up, and it's not as even. Whatever. What we see here is a deck with 24 land, and that is kind of the sweet spot. I'm literally looking for this particular... Watch this. Okay, because my anxieties are going to go off here. Just bump up. There we go. Ha! 24 land. Now, in a given standard deck, you want to have between 23 and 25 lands. Really, 24 is the golden spot. That is the number that you normally want to have of land. There are a few examples where you might want to have 23 land, and fewer examples where you would want to have 25 land. Maybe in a full control deck where you're trying to get up to your higher drops, like a 6 or 7 drop win con, you might have 25 lands where you're maybe cycling through cards a lot faster, so it's not a big deal. Very rarely will you have 25 lands. In a case of 23 land, I'll actually go ahead and go out of this deck for a second. We're going to save that so I don't... I know, I haven't crafted all the cards yet. What if my cards might have... I think this one. Does this one have 23 land? Let's see. This one might actually be 24 lands. 23. All right. So this is a deck with 23 land, and I'm specifically only running 23 land because of the amount of ramp in this deck. So we've got the Gilded Goose here, which is in the new set. Great for mana ramp in a weird, funny kind of way. Not as great as Llanowar Elves, which we've had, but just went out of rotation, unfortunately. This, too, is mana ramp for me, and the reason I might not have as much card draw or mana fixing to justify the 23 land, but if this is a +1/+1 counters deck, so if this guy gets a +1/+1 counter, he's already putting 3, and I have a bunch of cards in order to give him counters, so I justify this with 23 land because I don't need more than that. Another case where you would only need 23 land is if you are running a super aggro deck. And by aggro, this is an example of an aggro deck. It's an not Absent, this is Mardu Knights. And I might actually think this one is 24 land only because I'm running 3 different colors. So a mono red aggro deck you might see with only 23 mana because you don't really need to go up past that. And to kind of go into that more, we'll talk about it in a second about mana curve and where you can have that balance at. But 24 land, good place to be. Going back to the mono black deck that is not named yet because it is not complete and I haven't really figured it out. We talked about the number of lands you should have. Now let's talk about the number of creatures you should have. I believe the ratio is, in my notes here, 20 to 23 creatures for a basic deck. If you're kind of starting the game and you want to learn how things work, I would highly recommend 20 to 23 creatures. Now, if you look at this deck, we have creatures. Way more than 23 creatures. And I think that number's actually a little skewed off because of this guy. So if you have 20 to 23 creatures and 24 lands, the rest of those should be spells or kill spells specifically, something to kind of help you deal with the board if your creatures aren't doing it. Now, for example, this deck does run... I'm running 2 of this, which can deal with smaller creatures. This that can deal with smaller creatures. So that's 4 cards right there. And this guy, which is just going to be a staple in any deck moving forward for the next year with black in it, because this will let you destroy a target creature or planeswalker. So I technically have 2, 4, 7 kill spells in this particular deck. Plus this guy can have Death Touch. Now, obviously... This deck isn't necessarily as basic as I'm talking about, because you do want to have just 20 to 23 creatures, with the rest being spells, but I do have stuff here to deal with creatures, and honestly, this deck probably could be tweaked a little bit more to get some more oomph in there, but for the better part, we are talking about the land, about 24 land. Creatures, 20 to 23, give or take, maybe more. And let's say 10 spells, whether they be kill spells or otherwise, to help kind of manage the board so that your creatures can get in there and do damage. There you go. That is the basic breakdown of how many cards of each thing you should have in there. We aren't done completely yet. There is still more to talk about. Now, let you understand what the balance should look like, we want to stop you from making a mistake like this. Going back into my decks, and I think this deck isn't complete. This one is a huge example of what's not to do. So, we have what we call the mana curve. Now, mana curve is kind of illustrated in this bar chart here. Normally what you want to see is maybe a few 1-drops, a few 2-drops, a few 3-drops, 4-drops, a few 5-drops, and less 6 and 7-drops. So it looks like a curve. And the main point of doing that is so that on turn 1 you have something to do, on turn 2 you have something to do, on turn 3 you have something to do, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, so on and so forth. Now, this deck is a bit unbalanced because, well, to be completely honest, that should probably be over here. Now, this deck, again, dealing more with ramp and getting up to these higher drops, which, honestly, this deck doesn't have the amount of ramp to justify what we have here. Maybe kind of, because we do have so many 4-drops and then 5-drops. So, essentially, in this deck, what I'm trying to do is on turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, but really, it's too far on this side where there's so many 4-drops, so many 5-drops, so many 6-drops. So early game, I have a bigger chance of actually losing said game, especially if I don't get my early mana ramp. I think a deck here that I might have that is a good example is because you have 3 types of decks. You have a aggro deck, which was more like this knight deck here, where it's all about low drops. And now, see, you'll see in this curve, it's a very quick curve. A few 1-drops, a bunch of 2-drops, a few 3-drops, and then I have just a few big guys down here if the game does go on that long. This one, both of these 6-drops, I don't think actually count because these guys get less, they cost less for each knight that I have in play. So honestly, I'm dropping these on turn 3 or turn 4, depending on how my life is going. I do have this one 5-drop, which I'm kind of just playing with at the moment, but normally in an aggro deck, you don't want to have any creatures that cost more than a 3 converted mana cost. Now, converted mana cost is you've got the 1 on this card and then 2 black. So 1 plus 2 equals 3. It has a 3 converted cost. Something like the Hydras that you might see have X and then a number of mana. In that case, X is 0 unless specifically it's being cast at the moment. So the converting cost is 0 plus 2 equals 2. So that might come up every now and then. So this is what an aggro deck would look like. And again, it's a very quick curve. The other deck is a control deck. Deck number 2 that I want to talk about is Control, which can be seen here. This is a nickel for your thoughts. That is, I've done this deck a few times on the channel, and I keep improving it. Now, in this case, I've got no creatures. The main point of this deck is to control my opponent and what he can do, and then I win with my big drops here at the end. Now, I do technically run 3 creatures, which are where, yeah, this guy again, because he can be a creature. But more importantly, he's just good, a good kill spell here. And then everything else is to either get cards in my hand or to get my opponent to discard cards. And that's how this control deck works, which I need to tweak it a little bit more. Maybe drop one of these, throw in an extra Chandra. In fact, if I have it right now, I think I just might do it instead of forgetting about it. Chandra. I only have 1. I'm not going to craft an extra mythic right now, though I definitely should. Oh my god, I'm doing it. Stop doing the things that you're doing, Joshua. You don't need it right now. You don't have a lot of mythics. Well, I did it. Great. All right, so we're going to hit done on that. Save. Great. And then the final deck that there is a mid-range deck. So we've had an aggro deck, we've had a control deck, and a mid-range deck. This is a bad example. This was a bad example. I have to look back at one of my other cards. Man, Bear, Pig, maybe? Dinosaur. This was a mid-range deck. And in the mid-range deck, you're going to see, nope, there's a bunch of end drop. I don't play mid-range, apparently. So mid-range is really your 3, 4, and 5 drop decks, where you're trying to get up there and just have a bunch of those drops and kind of win the game. Not necessarily as fast as aggro, but getting the damage in before control would necessarily win the game. And it's kind of like a game of rock, paper, scissors. Aggro is normally good against control. Control is really good against mid-range, and mid-range is really good against aggro most of the time. I just lose to aggro a lot, to be completely honest. But going back to this deck here, we've talked about the 3 types of deck. We've talked about the mana curve. What else is there to talk about, really, in the basics? Let's see. Land, decks, magic, did that. Aggro decks, what they should consist of, how many creatures. Talked about mana curve, talked about kill spells. And finally, combos. You might be thinking, oh, wait, hold on. We'll get to combos in a second. Let's finish up on... wait, no, because I did talk about that mana curve. And just be careful not to have, like, 4 1-drops, 3 2-drops, and then all 6 and 7 drops, thinking those guys are stronger, because you're not going to be able to play anything up to turn 6. And that's why I don't know if I touched on that specifically, that's why you don't want to have all of your cards be strong creatures at the end, because you just won't be able to get to them. You're going to lose by turn 5 before you can put any of that out. Now, last thing that people think is a great idea, and you just shouldn't do it. Let's say you have 2 cards, and you're like, wow, if these 2 cards on the table hit, then I'm going to win the game. Don't do that. It's combo cards. They're fun, and having a janky deck is fantastic, but it all comes down to probability again. You don't just need that 1 card, which is already a 4 out of 60 chance to get, but you now actually need 2 different combo cards, which I know this math isn't right, but 8 out of 60 chance? Math might be a thing. Go watch Matt Pat's video for probability. I'm here for, tactic. So combo decks could be a lot of fun, and we do make them often on the brew over on Suinki's channel. You can check those out. But just normally, not a good idea for beginners to do. Just make, again, a good deck of 24 land, 20 to 23 creatures, and the rest being spells that will help you kind of win the game. And essentially, that is the basics on how to make a Magic the Gathering deck here in Arena. And, in real life, I've been playing a lot of Arena, and as you can tell, I've made a lot of decks. So this is a question that does pop up every now and then, and I just kind of wanted to address it a little bit. Hopefully next week we'll be able to start going over some of the decks that I've made. Good Knight is my Mardu Knights deck, and it's starting to work decent. This guy, still trying to make it work. Man, I'm trying to make that deck work. But finally, I got a Garruk deck that's kind of doing okay. So we'll look at those in the next coming weeks. But I hope this particular video was helpful. So we looked at, again, just to kind of recap what makes a good deck. You want to have the right amount of land, which is about 24. Have an array of creatures, somewhere between 20 and 23 creatures that consist of all of the different drops. 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop, 5 drops, and maybe a few 6. Just those are considered your bombs, and when you have it's called a bomb because once it hits the table, it kind of poof, you're going to win the game. So you don't want to have a lot of those, just enough, they're your win cons, your win conditions. And then fill the rest of the deck with the magic that you, spells, instant, and sorcery that you might need to help you win the particular match that you're trying to play against. You want to kind of base that around the meta, but that's another conversation for another time. And stay away from combos. That's that. That is how to make a decent deck in Magic the Gathering. I hope this was helpful. Again, if you're coming across this channel for the first time watching this video, I hope you subscribe because we'll have more Magic coming up in the future, and also a bunch of other great videos as well. So that's it. I'm done ranting about this particular topic. I hope you learned something today. Till the next time, I'll see you later. Thank you so much for watching this episode here on the Jovenshire channel. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button because you don't want to miss what we do here on the channel. And of course, in the meantime, we've got a video here on the right that I think you might like, and the one here on the left, well, YouTube thinks you're going to like it, so go give it a watch.